I absolutely love this thing, it is incredible, but I don't think you should buy it. Let's find out why. So for those of you that don't know, let's go over the specs of this device. It's got a 1200p 16 by 10 8.8-inch OLED, 1100 nit brightness at HDR. We've got a VRR window between 30 to 144 Hz. It's got the AMD Z2 Extreme 32 gigabytes of RAM. I've actually taken this apart and installed a 4 terabyte in there. Video on the channel if you want to find out how to do that yourself. We've got a 74 watt-hour battery. We've got Hall effect joysticks, and it currently comes with Windows 11, but there is supposed to be an official SteamOS version coming soon. But you can just install SteamOS yourself like I've done. There's a video on the channel.
Okay, it's time for me to pay the 128KB bills for today's totally impartial video sponsor. And yes, it's 8BitDo. And today we're taking a look back at an absolute classic. We reviewed the 8BitDo Ultimate 2 over a year ago, and honestly, it's still one of the greatest controllers that you can get. If you're juggling between gaming on your PC, the brand new Lenovo Legion Go 2, this is the only controller you need on your desk as it connects seamlessly via Bluetooth or via its ultra low latency 2.4 GHz receiver. You're getting bleeding edge TMR joysticks, so absolutely zero stick drift ever, with higher precision than standard Hall effects too. You're getting switchable Hall effect triggers, 2 pro level back paddles, and it comes with its own magnetic charging dock right in the box. And let's be honest, it looks cool while it does it too. So if you want the ultimate multi-platform pro controller, this could be it. Hit the link in the description to check out the 8BitDo Ultimate 2 or any of their other controllers, and by doing so you'll be directly supporting the channel. And of course, massive thanks to 8BitDo for sponsoring this video.
Now I want to start by saying this thing is heavy at 900 grams, which you'd kind of expect for the sheer size of this handheld, right? But this will immediately put some people off. However, using this device, for like 7 months or so, the weight hasn't been an issue for me. I get around it by using that built-in kickstand, which, side note by the way, I absolutely love the kickstand. It's built in, so no accessories needed. It's super sturdy, it locks in at any angle. When using it, I open the kickstand and just rest it on my lap or a table or whatever, so I'm not actually physically holding the weight constantly for long play sessions. I've had literally hours of playtime without having an issue with the weight, so that's just how I manage it. Now, ergonomically, it's not for everyone. Due to the Joy-Con-like True Strike controllers, the asymmetrical joystick layout design does mean that this right thumbstick here just isn't in the most ideal place. The extra 2 buttons on the right hand side will also put people off despite them being disabled in handheld mode, but you can't help but press them, which is annoying for some people. However, there is a fix for both of these issues. So despite the lack of third-party accessories out there, there are 2 which you can get. There's the generic TPU case, which is affordable and adds some protection around the entire device. Whilst it does slightly improve ergonomics, it doesn't fix the ergonomics entirely. Instead, what it does is it hides those 2 buttons on the right-hand side, making the device just more comfortable for use if you don't use those buttons, whilst actually still being able to use those buttons. Since it's an entire grip though, you will need to completely remove it if you want to play in tabletop mode or FPS mode. But the best accessory so far by a million miles is comfort grips. Now, I have an entire video on the channel about these, so I highly recommend you check that deep dive out. But these are effectively inexpensive 3D printed grips, which you can either order pre-made in any color that you like, or if you have a 3D printer, you can just buy the file and make them yourselves. So big shout out to channel member here at 128KB, Yendi, who actually printed mine for me and sent them over to me so that I could check them out for everybody. Now, these completely fix ergonomics entirely. They create large grips on either side, which fix the ergonomics, giving you perfect access to that right joystick. Now, these actually completely cover the 2 right buttons on the side, so you can't use them at all whatsoever with them installed, but you can still use all the back paddles. The benefit of this is you can actually still remove the True Strike controllers entirely and then use it in tabletop mode, but of course for FPS mode you will need to remove the right one to put it into the little FPS docky thing that it comes with. But my comfort grips just live on my Legion Go 2. I just never take them off. Now, there are so many buttons on this device, it's pretty insane, and while some of you will be put off by this, I actually prefer it. Why, you ask? Well, I'm glad you asked, because I love this because you can remap literally everything, and it means that I can program any macro, any key binding, any reassign button, whatever I want, anywhere I want, whenever I want, giving me far far more control over how I like to use this device. And for me personally, as like a power user, you might say, I like having all of that accessibility. Some handhelds only have like 2 programmable back paddles. That is not enough for me. I need more than that, and this device has a load more. However, before we get into that, let's just quickly mention the other inputs. So the face buttons are my favorite face buttons from any handheld. They're relatively small and convex, but they're super silent and really tactile despite being membrane. And I just love that 3D white text covered with that like transparent sort of plastic. It just makes them easily visible in any scenario. The bumpers are tactile micro switches that actuate anywhere you press them, which is ideal. And the triggers are massive, smooth analog triggers. Now there isn't hair trigger switches on the back though that turns them into like a digital switch or whatever, and that would have been nice, but I mean, you know, I'm just nitpicking here. There is a trackpad that is useful, but I mean, it's quite small and it's not as good as the Steam Deck trackpads, and honestly, I just default to using the touchscreen because the touchscreen is so big, it's just quicker for me to just press what I want. Now the D-pad itself is my favorite out of any handheld I've tried. It's got a great concave in it, no missed inputs. I just love playing platformers and Metroidvanias with it. It just feels so much nicer than anything else I've tried. But now let's go back to all of those programmable buttons. So we've actually got 6 buttons on the back. We've got 2 on the left controller. We've got 4 on the right controller, with 2 being on the side, but of course, like I said earlier, they are disabled in handheld mode, but you can just activate them in the software, which we'll talk about later. Now, although I do take the trade-off of using the comfort grips, which removes those side buttons, we still have a scroll wheel on the right-hand side as well, which is actually usable in handheld mode. I actually love this because it's great for like scrolling up and down like web pages, or in certain games it can do stuff. And I think it's actually underutilized because loads of people forget it's there and think it's only usable in FPS mode, when that's not the case. But that's not all of the programmable buttons, because there's a load on the front as well. We've got 2 buttons on the front of the left controller. These default to page and desktop, but I actually rebind them to open game bar and also to quickly open AMD software. Then we've got the 4 buttons towards the top of the screen. So we've got 2 on the left, 2 on the right. The lower ones are menu and view, which I still just call start and select. And then on the top, we have the Legion space button and on the left-hand side, and on the top right, we've got the Legion quick settings button. Now let's talk about the software. Whilst it's not as good as Asus's Armory Crate, which is actually really detailed, it is still useful, and I'm talking about Legion Space, which comes on this, and it is a big improvement over the original Legion Go, right? But it still could be better. But anyway, let's talk about it. Now I want to start with quick settings, and there's 2 of them which you can assign in Legion Space. One of them is actually built into game bar anyway, and this just sucks. Like, they added it in when the whole Xbox full screen experience, Xbox mode thing happened, and it's just a poor effort. You've got barely anything on there. I literally never use this, and if you assign it to the quick settings button, removes the actual quick settings, which is highly detailed and way better, so don't do that. You can just assign this button over here to be game bar and then go left on the bumper, and you can get to their rubbish little Legion Space thing if you want. I literally never use this. It is rubbish, so don't use that. Use the default one instead, because this is highly detailed and lets you customize so much. So there's actually 7 tabs here, and the first is your performance tab, which shows you your all your utilization, right? Your CPU, GPU, all that good stuff. And then you've got your thermal mode, so you can actually go down here and change between quiet, balance, performance, and then custom. If you click on custom, you can literally change the TDPs to whatever you want. You can even max it out at like 35 watts, even on battery power, which is crazy. Performance is where I pretty much live personally when I'm not just testing stuff, because by default it's 20 watt profile on battery. When you plug it in, it will go up to that 35 watt. That is perfect. Then you've got fan control, FPS limiter, and then OS power mode. Now this is actually really important, but this video is going to be far too long, and I've already explained this in another video. So if you want to find out how to set up all of these and get the absolute best performance out of your Legion Go 2, go check out my performance guide where I go into detail about how to set all this stuff up. Now the next tab is general, and this is where you can change your brightness settings, your volume, your Bluetooth settings, Wi-Fi, resolution, display, refresh rate. You've got a bunch of stuff on there, as well as the on-tap, one-tap screen burn-in protection for the OLED, but it always seems to just turn itself off. So there's a bit of a bug on that one. Now beyond that are other tabs that are just less frequently used. The performance tab is pretty much where you're going to live if you're, tinkering. If not, just set it to performance and you're basically ready to go. And then you can just go down through general and you can go through here. And then you've got your frame rate monitor there as well. The other ones, you've got a controller tab, which is cool. And then you've got the quick settings, which has a load of useful stuff, but I just barely use it. You've got productivity, you've got the help section, and then just power to turn it off or restart or anything like that. Now let's talk about Legion Space, the actual software running all of this from Lenovo. Let's dive into the actual app. So Legion Space then is the core software for everything on this handheld. And what I dislike about this immediately is the two separate store tabs. This really annoys me, especially because it defaults to going to it. So you've got the first store tab, which is just like a key selling place where you can buy random games and stuff, but it's often just cheaper to go find it yourself on other key seller websites online or just Steam sales or whatever. So that is the store. Then miles over to the right, you've also got Legion Store, which then just takes you directly to the Lenovo website to buy like physical stuff. I really dislike this. I wish I could turn both of those off because I just never go there. It's annoying. Let me remove them from Legion Space, but no, obviously it's like trying to get you to buy stuff, so they're not going to do that, but it's annoying. You've got library as well. I never use this either. Basically, the only ones that are worth using is settings and controllers. And within these, you've got a bunch of other tabs as well. So the settings tab here is essentially just a larger view of the performance tab window within that quick settings sidebar thing that I showed you earlier, right? And this shows you all your performance monitors and utilization. You've got the performance section, which if you click in here, you can change through all your thermal modes like we saw before, and the fan speeds and stuff. It's basically all the same, but there's one extra one that is not found in the quick settings, and that is UMA frame buffer size, which should just say VRAM allocation. And this lets you change part of your RAM to your VRAM, because this is an APU, which means it's a system on a chip, right? So you've got the CPU and the GPU in one chip, and the RAM is shared between them. So I've got 32 gig in this system, and I can choose how much RAM I want to be on the graphics side. Now, I've actually done an even split, 16-16. Most people will be fine with 10 gig of VRAM or 12 gig of VRAM, but I'm going 16-16, and that's how I run it. Next, you've got the rest. So you've got the display tab, which again, all of this can be done in the quick settings menu. You don't really need to open up this main tab, right? But disks and drives is where you can get driver updates if they ever pushed driver updates into this app, which they just don't do. You have to manually go and download them from their website, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, so basically this tab is kind of pointless as well. But the main one here is the controller tab. This is like the most important reason to come to Legion Space, because this is where you can do all the remaps and everything. And whilst I do think it could be better, this is actually okay. I'll tell you why it should be better in a minute. So here you can edit the default tabs of button mapping, right? So if I click in here, I can go to the current profile and I can view or edit there, or I can create a new one. And let's just go view or edit here. It's going to open up all of the buttons, and I can literally go through here and change absolutely anything. So you can see at the bottom here, I've done Windows plus G for the game bar one that I've set up, left Alt and R for AMD software as well. So if I click in this, you can do anything from controller inputs, mouse, keyboard, number pad, key combinations. You can do basically everything. And that's just on the front. You can flip round to the back as well. So the rear just here, and then you can go through and change absolutely everything on these as well, which is really, really cool. Or there's even function shortcuts, which like show you a load of different inputs, right? So you can change like dual input presses to do certain things, but I don't really use these if I'm honest. But if you really wanted to, you can hold the Legion Space button and then LB and press and hold it, and it will show you all the like default shortcuts anyway. Now, why I said it could be better is because these are like global settings. So yes, you can change between profiles, but I'd love to be able to have per game profiles like Asus Armory Crate, where I can set for one specific game, and then when that game loads up, it will then apply that default configuration, right? And then when I back out of it, it unpairs it and goes back to the global one. You don't have that here, which is unfortunate. So you need to manually create a whole profile per game and switch to it, which you could do in the quick settings if you want to, just by going over to controllers, clicking on gamepad, and then if you've made another one, it will show there. And then other than this, you've got the like RGB lights, which you can change here. There is also the joystick settings, trigger settings, gyro, where you can change like dead zones and all that good stuff, and then controller calibration, and then more as well, which is just like basic stuff. So overall, Legion Space is actually pretty good. It's not bad, it's responsive, it does pretty much everything you'd want. It could be better, like I said, but honestly, I just don't use it. Once I've set the device up following our guides here on the channel, right, I just use the quick settings menu, and that's how I pretty much work. Now, I want to address Xbox mode or Xbox full screen experience, whatever they decide to call it these days, right, because it is there. You can use it, and it's supposed to get an official like launch at some point. It's meant to kind of be out already, but it's not, but you can just hack it on yourself. Videos on the channel here as well. Xbox full screen experience then is basically a full screen version of the Xbox app on Windows, but it's not just that, because it actually boots the device into this environment without loading unnecessary background tasks and processes. And what that does is frees up around 2 GB of RAM from the system whilst everything's disabled in the background, right? So whilst I actually hate the aesthetics of this app, I think it should just look like an actual Xbox like dashboard, not just a full screen app, right? Because these tiles and stuff are annoying. It is pretty useful, especially now that they've done some updates where you can add any app here. So you don't ever need to go back to actual Windows desktop. You can just add any app, any game, even if it's not Xbox, right? All your like Steam games or your Ubisoft games, EA, Battle.net, like whatever you want, GOG, will all show here, and then they'll all show in your game section here. But because you can navigate pretty much everything through here, it makes it really easy. And with the game bar here, I can go down and open Steam, and then if I open Steam, it's really good because it stays in full screen mode, right? So it's not going to go down to the desktop or load any unnecessary processes. It's just going to boot Steam straight into this, and I can utilize that extra 2 GB of RAM saved, which is super cool. And then you just launch in here, and then I'm in Steam. And by default, the quick settings button, if you press and hold it, will bring up the carousel in the Xbox mode, and then you can just shut things down here. So you can press X and it will close any programs. So it's like a super lightweight version of Windows, which is designed for gaming handhelds, but it's going to be basically coming to everything, including Project Helix, no doubt, right? So this is kind of like the best way of using Windows. But don't worry, if you want to still use Windows, you can click Windows Desktop, right? And then bam, there you go, you're straight on to the desktop, and you can just use this like a normal PC, right? And I can just go, I don't know, to Google or whatever I want and just use this like a normal PC. And then if I want to go back, I can always go enter Xbox mode, and then it's going to say, do you want to restart, which optimizes performance because it saves that 2 GB of RAM, or you can just go, nah, like I'm going backwards and forwards and I don't want to save that RAM. I just want the like convenience of using it like this, right? And then you can do so. So if you're staying on Windows, I actually really like Xbox full screen experience just because it makes it easier to navigate and everything with the controllers, makes it feel more like a gaming sort of system rather than just like a laptop or a PC, right? And obviously with the new Project Helix, like I mentioned, going to be like PC/Xbox, this is just going to get better and better. Like it's going to see more updates and it's just going to get better over time. So I personally like Xbox mode. Whether you like it or not is a different story. Now, just like the Switch 2, there's multiple play styles with the Legion Go 2. We have the standard handheld mode, which is what I use 99% of the time. Then we have tabletop mode, where you can remove either like Joy-Con from the side, right? Which is pretty good if you find the device too heavy. Just set the tablet down and then just play like that with the controllers removed, right? Or then we have the FPS mode, which honestly, I just don't like. Now, I really like the Switch 2's mouse mode because it turns the Joy-Con like flat, like a real mouse, right? But that's not how the Legion Go 2 does it. The Legion Go 2 has a vertical mouse, and I hate it. I just straight up hate it. It just does not feel natural to me. I can't aim with it. I find even just using the cursor and trying to click stuff like difficult. Like, I'm not a pilot, right? I did play joystick games as a kid on like Windows, right? With like Microsoft, like simulator, whatever it is, the flight sim thing, right? But now I don't. I just want like a normal mouse. So if it was the controller turned sideways and used it like a mouse like the Switch 2, I'd love it. But because it's vertical, it sucks. I really don't like it. So I never use it. I literally just use it to get footage for you guys, but I just straight up don't like it. I just play this thing in handheld mode. And now let's just talk about that screen. This is the #1 highlight selling point of the Legion Go 2. So we've got to talk about it. This is probably going to be quite long, so strap in. So the screen itself is the sole reason I decided to upgrade from my ROG Ally X, right? The Legion Go 2 has the best screen on the handheld market by an absolute long shot, and there's several reasons to why. So firstly, it's an 8.8 inch, so it's absolutely huge compared to a 7-inch handheld, especially since we've got a 1200p 16:10 aspect ratio, so vertically it's larger than a 16:9 resolution. And that additional screen space immediately makes the screen appear even larger. And many games actually support 16:10, but if they don't, then it doesn't matter because you'll get black bars, but because it's OLED, you don't even see the black bars, so it just feels like a native 16:9 screen anyway. So of course I just mentioned it's OLED, but this is just not any OLED. This has a peak brightness of 1100 nits thanks to HDR. So the combination of OLED and HDR means the contrast is exceptional, and HDR highlights are absolutely incredible. I can't even capture just how good this screen looks on camera because I don't film in HDR, but it's something you need to experience yourself. But the difference between a standard LCD handheld and this being OLED HDR is absolutely ridiculous. Like, it is next level. It feels like you're on the next generation of system. It really does, purely thanks to the screen. Now, there are two issues that arise here though, and that's, first of all, the screen is the absolute glossiest screen I've ever seen, and being a touchscreen, it's a huge fingerprint magnet as well. So despite some image degradation, I actually use a matte screen protector currently. I use a JSOX matte screen protector, because that cuts down the reflections completely, right? Because it's too glossy for me to film here otherwise. All the lights just reflect everywhere and it's horrible. So I use a matte screen protector, but like I said, there is an image degradation. We've got videos on the channel all about screen protectors and stuff. However, I am actually waiting on an anti-reflective screen protector to arrive from AliExpress, and this will still be glossy, but it cuts down reflections by an absolute load whilst keeping more than 99% light transmittance. So it won't affect image quality like matte screen protectors do. The next issue is a much bigger issue, and that's because Windows does not handle HDR well, and nor will it configure it for you. You have to use our guide here on the channel to do that, and unfortunately there'll be a lot of people that have not seen our guide, so they'll be not utilizing this screen to the full potential. Now, OLED panels are prone to Mura effect, and whilst the Legion Go 2 does suffer this, when HDR is being configured correctly, then it is actually fixable. It fixes Mura effect, and again, our HDR guide shows you how to do that. Now, the screen does have another trick up its sleeve though, and this is one of the key reasons I bought this personally, and that's variable refresh rate, VRR. OLEDs and VRR don't go hand in hand, and I'll tell you about that in a second, right? But it's absolutely essential for low-powered devices like handheld. It forces the panel to refresh when the GPU sends a frame out. So without VRR, a panel would just refresh at a set rate, regardless of what the GPU is outputting, right? Now this would mismatch when a frame hits the screen and when it refreshes, so it would cause screen tearing, visual stutters, it wouldn't feel smooth, it would be all juddery and horrible, right? Variable refresh rate aligns the GPU's output to the screen's refresh rate. So no matter how much it fluctuates, it's completely in sync, right? And that completely eliminates screen tearing, leading to a continuously smooth experience, even if you're experiencing huge frame drops. Now, other handhelds have a VRR window of between 48 Hz and 120 Hz. However, the Legion Go 2 here has a much higher refresh rate at 144 Hz, but the VRR window actually starts at 30 Hz. So it's 30 to 144 Hz. And that is absolutely amazing, since a lot of newer titles and future titles will absolutely be running at that lower end, so we can still utilize VRR, which is amazing. And that's not all, though. I said earlier that OLEDs and VRR don't normally mix well. Let me just give you a recap on that. So generally, OLEDs are prone to VRR gamma flickering, where basically, let's say your 1% lows are so much lower than your average frame rate, it causes the OLED's VRR panel to flicker uncontrollably only in dark areas because of the gamma flicker, right? The only way to fix this is either turn VRR off entirely and set a frame cap so that your 1% lows aren't always dropping down and your average frame rate is correct, right? Or upgrade your GPU. And obviously we can't do that on the Legion Go 2. It's an APU, we can't upgrade it, but we don't need to on the Legion Go 2 because somehow they've completely fixed it. The Legion Go 2's custom OLED panel doesn't suffer from OLED VRR flicker at all whatsoever, despite the low-powered nature of the device. It's honestly remarkable that they've avoided OLED VRR flicker. It still surprises me to this day, and I spent a long time trying to break it, and there just isn't any OLED VRR flicker. It's amazing. So all of these things together, let's just recap: 16:10, 8.8-inch OLED, HDR, 1100 nits, VRR from 30 to 144 Hz, zero VRR flickering. It just makes this the most immersive handheld that you can get. Period. Yes, this video is still going. Let's talk about gaming. So gaming on the Legion Go 2 is just incredible. Mainly, again, thanks to the impressive screen we just discussed, but also thanks to the AMD Z2 Extreme, which is the RDNA 3.5 APU, right? So whilst only marginally more performance than its predecessor, the Z1 Extreme, the Z2 Extreme excels at lower wattages. So there was better performance for less power. Now, I pretty much exclusively run everything at 20 watts in handheld mode, which I mentioned earlier, for the best performance to battery life ratio. But if I really want to squeeze out as much as possible, I can just plug it in and run it at 35 watts. Now, with that huge 32 gig of RAM, you can assign up to 16 gig of VRAM without any issues, letting you drive textures within games higher for better looking graphics whilst keeping the frame rate high as well. And the most important thing, though, with that extra RAM is less stuttering. The additional RAM massively helps with that. Now, we do a full Will It Run series here on the 128KB YouTube channel where I test like newly released games across a board of different handhelds, and often the Legion Go 2 is the only one that doesn't stutter because it's got the most RAM out of them. Now, the only games I'll actively choose the Xbox Ally X for is for FPS games. And that's mainly down to the stick tension, because the stick tension on the Legion Go 2 is a little bit loose for my liking, and the Xbox Ally ones are higher stick tension, which just gives me a little bit more accuracy when playing FPS games. And of course, we can't disregard the fact that, you know, AMD has driver level upscaling, so the Legion Go 2 pretty much plays anything that you throw on it, especially if the game has its own upscaling built in as well. Eventually, it will come to the point of struggling, but that screen is so incredible. I'm not opposed to streaming to it from another desktop or using GeForce Now or whatever, and keeping it going way past its own capabilities when it starts slowing down. Now, I mentioned SteamOS version. There is meant to be a SteamOS variant releasing sometime this year. It's meant to be around June, but you can absolutely just install SteamOS onto the Windows version right now. We do have a guide on the channel, so you can go check that out, and that's how to do it early, but it is like the beta version basically. So whilst Windows is excellent to play literally all of your games from any launcher, including Game Pass games natively, and any online multiplayer that has anti-cheat like Battlefield 6 or Call of Duty or whatever, SteamOS is Linux based, and as such is a much lighter and more streamlined operating system focused on gaming, which nets a good, I don't know, 10 to 15% additional performance just for switching to a different operating system. SteamOS, though, being Linux, means you can't natively run Game Pass games. You can only stream them, and also anti-cheat games like Battlefield and Call of Duty just aren't supported. So it's more of a pain to install games from other launchers as well. So, you know, there is trade-offs here. The benefits of SteamOS, though, is the performance is so much better. It is a lot better, and SteamOS update continuously. There's updates pretty much like every other day for SteamOS, whereas that is not the case on Windows, and they take care of everything for you. You're not reliant on Lenovo giving you driver updates, SteamOS just does it for you, which is crazy. The other benefit is it makes it fully feel like a gaming console, not like Windows. So there's trade-offs, but you know, I really like SteamOS. Now, I talked about updates and how SteamOS will handle updates for you, and that's kind of a good thing because Lenovo suck at updates. So let's discuss that. Lenovo has only released one GPU driver to the Legion Go 2 within the first 7 months of its life, and that driver was only a couple of weeks ago. Lack of support is increasingly worrying, and despite their high price flagship device, it's almost like they just don't care about support. There's like just no updates for this thing. It's ridiculous. And that is the main driving factor that pushed me to install SteamOS myself, because Steam care more about a device that isn't theirs than the company that make it. So Steam care more than Lenovo, which is ridiculous, and you get better performance as well. So I mean, it's a bit of a trade-off. If Lenovo pull the plug and don't bother with drivers anymore, your only way is going to be SteamOS, where they'll take care of you for free. Now we're nearly at the end. I need to talk about the price. So I said at the beginning, I absolutely love the Legion Go 2, because I do. The Legion Go 2 is an incredible device. This thing is my favorite handheld that I've ever used. It is amazing, mainly thanks to the OLED screen and just the sheer performance of this thing. It is absolutely incredible, but I don't think you should buy one. And that's because Lenovo just decided to hike the prices to like more than double. The 2TB version of this in America is nearly $3,000, which is absolutely ridiculous, which is basically double the price it launched at, and that's the highest tier model. Even the lower tier models have doubled in price. Even here in the UK, the price has gone up, but not as considerable as in America. And yes, you can say that's down to, you know, the AI stuff driving prices of SSDs and RAM up, but that's just not the case, because otherwise everything would be double the price, right? It's only Lenovo that has doubled the price, and it's so outrageous that it's just not worth it. Especially when you can buy yourself an Xbox Ally X for $1,000, so $999, or $799, £800, $1,000, and it's basically the same specs. Whereas you're going to be paying more than double that for a Legion Go 2. Yes, the screen is not as good. That is considerably the main factor here. It's a much smaller screen and it's nowhere near as good. But I mean, are you willing to pay 2 to 3 times the amount for the same thing, but just with a slightly better screen? I don't think it's worth that. So yeah, is it worth buying? If you can find it at the original asking price, or secondhand, or open box, or refurbished, whatever, at a decent price, absolutely it's worth it. It's not worth paying full price, especially when the current asking price is pretty much the same territory as other AMD AI Max 395 APU handhelds, right? With the likes of, I don't know, let's say a Z13 Flow or the GPD Win or any of the 1X player stuff. All those kind of things are far more powerful devices, way more powerful than this thing, and you're into that price territory now. So you should probably be looking at them, even though I don't even recommend them for most people, because the prices are just so outrageous. For most people, like, it's just not worth it. So probably don't get one of these, and instead get an Xbox Ally X whilst you still can at like £800 or $1,000, instead of paying like 2 to 3 grand for one of these. And that's all I have to say about it. I know this has been an incredibly long video, but there was a lot to say. I even had to cut stuff out of my script because I could see that this was going on and on and on. I had like 8 pages, but whatever. There we go. Let me know all your thoughts down in the comments. Whilst you're down there, like this video, subscribe. Let me know everything you love about, you know, the Legion Go 2 and handhelds and all that good stuff. And I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Oh, and become a member and you get to chat to us on our private Discord as well. Bye.